How are you all doing tonight? My name is Bigbobbedboi and welcome to my Aldor versus Scryer video. You're probably thinking, Bigbobbedboi, you were smart, but why would you do a video on Aldor versus Scryer when there are a million of them? It's a good question. You too are smart. A lot of those videos are not good. In fact, a lot were marginally shit. Even from YouTubers who normally do good videos. I watched way too many of them. A lot of them talked more about how to farm the rep rather than why you would want to go for one faction over the other. So that is what I'm going to cover here. The conventional wisdom is casters go Scryer, physical DPS goes Aldor. And I got an independent fact check on that. It's mostly true. But there's more to it than that, so spread eagle, let's dive in deep. I've come up with three main things to think about when choosing Aldor or Scryer. The short-term gains, mainly gear, long-term gains, mainly enchants, and the often forgotten, but not by me, convenience. Let's look at the gear first. We'll start with what is probably the biggest one, Scryer's Blood Gem. Shit! This is a nice trinket, and you could end up wearing it a while, because yeah, there aren't an abundance of trinkets, and we do need two of them, which is more than one. But is it really irreplaceable? Let's look at some other trinkets you can get right at launch. Sniffer's Nexus Horn. Now this is crit, not hit, but this trinket might be really good. When TBC launched, it was very good, so good that it was nerfed multiple times. If it's in its 2.0 state, it's probably more DPS than Scryer's Blood Gem. 2.4.3 state, alright, maybe not. But there are other trinkets. Ziri's Gift is super easy to get, and it's good. Icon of the Silver Crescent is also not that hard to get. Now, I can hear some casters losing their shit. Gotta have the hit, bruv. I need the hit. If you are really that in need of hit from a trinket for some reason, you can get Arcanist Stone. It's a little bit less hit than Scryer's, but it still has hit. Drops from Epoch Hunter, Heroic though. Not one of the more farmed dungeons, but you can probably get a group. Because Epoch Hunter does drop some cool items, like these fabulous looking Paladin pants with 3 sockets that I always wanted and never got. Alright, let's look at one more piece of gear. The Aldor Exalted Vindicator's Brand. This doesn't really matter to melee DPS because you're 9 times out of 10 going to be blacksmithing, but the one-hand blacksmith sword isn't so great for sword rogues, and there's not a lot of options in early TBC, so you go Aldor for this. And that's mostly true. There really aren't a lot of alternatives here. You can buy Blink Strike if you have the gold. It is good. Proc rate on that's like 6-7%. Horseman's Blade is better if it's Halloween, and you will be able to replace it in Kara with Spite Blade. But even more likely, you'll 100% replace it with Gladiator's Slicer. Gladiator's Slicer is very easy to get, even if you suck the PvP, and you'll be able to get it kind of quickly, I guess. So in TBC, Arena launched 30 days after the expansion did. Then you'll need Arena points, so average around 7 weeks after launch is a good guess. If you start thinking about farther into the expansion, Vindicator's Brand looks even more like shit. I think those are the two scenarios where you get the biggest gear benefit from picking a specific faction, and really there are alternatives to all of those items, and some are obsolete really quickly. If you're leveling a few months after the X-Pack launches, the gear choices should have almost no impact on your decision. Right at launch, a small impact. But for casters, not only is the Scryer Blood Gem good, you also get a very nice ring from Scryer, so that is something to keep in mind as well. But let's look at some shit that will be more important after the first month. The enchants. At Honored Rep, you can get some cheap enchants for either faction. These cheap ones do differ between the two quite a bit. Inscription of Vengeance for Aldor, Inscription of the Blade for Scryers. But you're not really going to use these, not outside of short-term gear. Even the ZG enchants are generally better than these. The real important enchants are the exalted ones, same names but they add greater because nice. Each faction adds the stat the other one had in lesser quantity, so you get crit plus some AP, or you get AP plus some crit. For most specs, these differences are not big. They are balanced pretty well overall. But you are going to have these for all of TBC, and for some classes these stats can start to matter. Let's look at Hunter, HMR, for example. We don't have Sims right now, and the old ones are kind of fucked, but for Hunter, crit is really valuable. We have mortal shots and go for the throat. Unless we're really high on crit already and focus capping, the crit is probably going to be more DPS than the AP, so the Scryer enchant is probably slightly better for Hunter than Aldor, even though conventional wisdom says go Aldor, which makes no real sense. If a hunter goes Aldor, you can get a nice ring, Kalon's Signet ring, but that doesn't mean shit. There are a ton of good rings out there. I'd rather have the Scryer belt, Socrathar's girdle, and I'm not going to use any rep gear from either. Then we get to the fucking necklaces. Alright, so I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is where shit goes off the fucking rails. I thought this was going to be an easy video, but I spent like 2 days just researching these necklaces. I'm not even making that up. And this is probably why other videos skip this topic. I know I had the Scryer one on my warrior, but I was mostly PvPing by 2.4, so I wouldn't have really used it. I went all over the goddamn internet looking for info on these necklaces. I read shitty blog post after shitty blog post from 2008. At one point, I think I ended up on some shady Uraguayan site. It was fucked. I tried to find some archived threads about it on the old EJ forums. Nothing. Old Wowhead comments were somewhat useful though. Someone said that maxdps.com, don't go to that site in 2021, listed the Scryer neck as shit, and the Aldor one is great, talking about the melee ones here. Now, I found some archived versions of that site, but they would always break when I looked at the hunter section. Even in 2008, hunters were being put down. I did search around some other TV sites, but it all ended up in Korean, even though the guy's name was Captain America. What the fuck? Really? I have no idea. This whole thing was just cryptic bullshit after more cryptic bullshit. I even got propositioned for surprise asexual favors at one point, and I'm still not sure how I feel about it. So let me try to simplify this as best as I possibly can. In 2.4 with the Sunwell, we got Quell Denas dailies and SSO rep. At Exalted with SSO, you can buy a necklace. That will have a unique effect if you are Exalted with Scryer or Aldor. Most of these necks were pretty good, but not amazing. However, for some reason, people seem to think the physical DPS one for Aldor was amazing, which having an AP proc on a necklace does sound really nice. But the only math I could find in old comments did not show that. It showed the two being pretty close to equal. The Scryer one did have some bugs that were patched out, so maybe that was why it got a really bad reputation. I don't even know anymore. I'm questioning every life choice I have ever made after trying to find info on these necklaces. Now for the tank and caster ones, those ones are a bit easier to replace with other epic necks, so it shouldn't really factor into your Aldor versus Scryer decision. The healer ones are a bit harder to quantify, but the Scryer one actually seems better. It doesn't proc if a hot is ticking and would overheal, which is nice. Although the Aldor one is good for snapshotting like Earth Shield or Prom, I guess. I don't think any of them should influence your decision, outside of maybe the melee DPS one if max DPS was correct. We can't say for sure because we can't actually test it, but I have no reason to believe the math I could find was wrong. Even if the Aldor one does end up being way better than the Scryer, it's still replaced by tier 5 necklaces and it doesn't come out until 2.4. Either way, fuck these necklaces, I'm ready to move on. I guess we were talking about the enchants and their long-term effects before I ended up getting a Uraguayan virus. Looking at the 4 enchants here, they're all close, but will ultimately be determined by your spec which one is best. So for DPS, just throw it up on a sim when those are out. That will really help you determine this. For healers, most are going to benefit more from the healing over the MP5, especially like Paladin. And if you know you're going to have Shadow Priests out the ass in your raid, you'll benefit more from the plus healing. Healing is always good. MP5 is only good if you would otherwise go boom. Tanks. So you obviously want to get defense capped, but even after that, defense is still a really decent avoidance stat. Just talking about avoidance, 1 point of defense is about 0.05 avoidance. 1 point of dodge is about 0.053% avoidance. But you also get block chance and a bit more freedom in your gearing with defense. So it's a very solid choice for warrior and paladin tanks. Essentially what we're going for here is whichever one has the higher amount of your best secondary stat is the one to go for. I prefer that this is more important than the short-term gains you would get in early TBC by focusing on the rep gear, especially since there are replacements for so many of them. Okay, on to the first part of the last part now. The last part being convenience, and its first part being professions. Choosing Aldor or Scryer does not alter your professions very much. It really doesn't. All the gear with a recipe tied to either is BOE. So if you need the healing spell thread, but are a Scryer tailor, you just buy it. It's really not a big deal. Even some patterns that the faction specific vendors sell are BOE. So just have a friend or homeless guy buy them for you and trade them to you. Very easy. The only slightly significant thing when it comes to professions are the trainers. So Aldor get the only jewel crafting trainer in Shatrath, and Scryers get the enchanting trainer. But there are other trainers out in the world anyway, and it's not like they're out in Africa. There's a JC and enchanting trainer at the Stormspire, plus the ones back in Honored Hold and Thrallmar. It's really not that big of a perk. People also really like to mention the elevators. Yeah, that's why. So you can't fall off the Aldor elevator. You will die. You can fall off the Scryer elevator. You won't die. Bruv, who gives a shit? This matters for like 3 days. It's TBC. You're going to get a flying mount. You can use those in the city. This really doesn't make any difference. Now what does make a difference? Flight paths. Yes, Scryer and Aldor get different flight paths in Shadowmoon Valley. Scryers have Sanctum of the Stars on the southeast side. Aldor have Altar of Shatar on the northeast side. I timed how long it takes to go from each flight path to the two important areas in Shadowmoon Valley. The Scryer times were Black Temple, 37 seconds, Netherwing Ledge of 46 seconds. The Aldor times were Black Temple, 26 seconds, Netherwing Ledge, 1 minute 6 seconds. And just for comparison here, I also took the Horde and Alliance flight paths to Netherwing. The Horde flight path to Netherwing was 1 minute 42 seconds, and the Alliance one was 1 minute 1 second, so actually faster than Aldor there. So, does this matter? I don't fucking know. It matters to me. Let's map this out. Gross. Let's say Netherwing dailies come out a few months after release. So we do them for like 60 weeks, if you're going to keep doing them for gold. That's 300 days if we don't do weekends. Come on, we got shit to do, right? If you save 15 seconds every time, that's 4,500 seconds. That's a lot of seconds. It's also an hour and 15 minutes. You can do a lot with that. In fact, I looked up movies you could watch with that time you would save. Some movie with Tramp Hitler, Mexican Bus Ride, Other Men's Women. A lot of really solid titles here. I'll probably watch other men's women. Hitozuma isn't my thing, but why not? But really, the only one I see here as significant is to Netherwing. It's not massive, but that is kind of annoying, and I usually do take regular fight paths in TBC, even with an epic mount. You can't really auto run into nowhere and go take a piss. You will most likely die or get stuck on a mountain if you do that. Alright, so let's quell this shitstorm and tie it all together. Here's my final recommendations based on class. Mage. Here's the stat weights done by Vontre. I've not found any differing from this, they seem to be the best. This makes the Aldor enchant better than the Scryer. If you're confident you can get the trinket and ring gear alternatives easy enough, then go for Aldor for the better enchant. It will serve you better in the long run. Lock. Lock is in a similar situation. Spell power is a better stat than straight crit for UA and even Destro. Couldn't find anything about demonology, unfortunately. Rogue. Well, Might of the Scourge is actually still your best shoulder enchant, so if you're a mega tryhard, you can still go and get those, but the two are actually incredibly close. The Aldor one starts off slightly better, but the gap is pretty much closed by Sunwell. Honestly, Rogue has probably the best balanced enchant of all. I'd probably go Aldor for the easy sword and Scryer for the easy dagger, depending on which spec I'm interested in playing. Once it's farther out and the expansion and those weapons just don't matter anymore, I'd go Scryer for the convenience. War. To me, this one is pretty easy. I would go Scryer. The tanking enchant is slightly better for Scryer, and the DPS enchants are very close. Again, there is the small chance that Aldor neck being better, but again, fuck those necklaces, you would replace it by then anyway, unless you're not raiding. Paladin. Like Warrior, I'd go Scryer for the same reasons, unless you are healing as a main. For Paladin healing, the Aldor one is superior to the Scryer enchant. Priest. As we just mentioned before, generally plus healing is better than MP5, but they aren't exactly comparable. It's not like plus crit and plus spell damage where both are there to add damage. They do different things. However, in 2.3, meditation for Priest was changed, and then in 2.4, mana regeneration calculations were changed. If we're in 2.4.3, Spirit is miles better than MP5, so I'd probably go for the plus healing. For Shadow Priest, crits are lower value than other casters, there's no plus crit bonus talent. And dots can't crit in TBC, so once again, I would go Aldor. As long as you're not too hung up on the ring and trinket. Druid. Alright, this one's kind of tricky. Tank druids might benefit more going Aldor. You do want to defense cap, but it's less useful for a druid once you are defense capped compared to the other tanks. For balance, it seems generally the same as other casters. Spell power beats out spell crit. For tree, once again, Aldor slightly better. I could not find crit AP stat weights for feral DPS. I would assume it's similar to rogue with a little less value on crit since you've got more bleeds, but I'm not sure. With that being said, I would probably go Aldor on druid. Although this is the one I'm least sure of, just being honest. Shaman. For enhance, it's going to depend, kind of. Crit is a little less valuable since you don't have elemental focus. Although you'll have unleashed rage, flurry, and shamanistic focus either way. Meaning enhance always has a lot of things based on crit, making crit really valuable. From a personal DPS standpoint, this makes the enchants fairly equal, with Scryer being incredibly slightly better for groups because of unleashed rage. Healing, same as the others, Aldor is just slightly better. While not as strong as spell power, crit is very good for Ellies because of elemental fury and clear casting. Honestly, I don't think it matters. These are all really close on Shaman. If you're going to heal a lot, maybe go Aldor for the very slightly better one there. If you're going to go Ellie, you may as well take the ring and trinket since the differences in enchants are so small and hit up Scryers. Hunter. HMR, you know what it is. Alright, I'm going to throw an insane curveball your way and say go Scryer. I alluded to this earlier, but there's no real gain in Aldor. There's no great gear that we want from Aldor. From a personal DPS standpoint, the enchants are about equal. The only potentially better thing from Aldor is the necklace, but we're probably not even going to use that unless you're not raiding when Sunwell comes out. So if they're about equal, why go Scryer? Serve needs crit to keep exposed weakness up, and more thrill of the hunt means less time in Viper. It's the most important secondary stat for Serve, and it's also very important for BM. Go for the throat, kill command, but don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's a massive difference between the two, although I am going to choose Scryer. And in fact, that is true for most of these. A lot of them do have clear winners, but even in those, the difference isn't massive. If you're not a min-maxer, maybe you want to save that 1 hour 15 so you can watch Tramp Hitler like I will. Or you're a lazy bastard and want to be next to your enchanting trainer. Well, if that's the case, then you can pick that one. Did I miss anything? I don't know, probably. Damn! This video took way longer than I expected. Definitely the most in-depth Aldor vs Scryer video on YouTube. Not sure if that's a good thing though. And even though I assuredly got a Uruguayan virus, I had a damn good time making this video. If you did watching it, hit that sub button, bell, like button, share button, all that other shit. I appreciate each and every one I get. And we even have memberships now. You can check them out by clicking the join button or right by the sub button. It is absolutely the best way to support the channel, and you'll get some really cool emotes. Plus, it's way better and cheaper than a Twitch sub. I've got a lot of WoW content already on the channel and have much more coming, especially at the end of this month. And that includes streaming right here on YouTube, so be sure to stick around for that. If there's any specific WoW Classic or TBC Classic content you'd like to see, be sure to let me know in them comments. But that is going to be all for this one. I really appreciate you all watching, and I will see you all for the next one.